Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. This is definitely, as with all these, I learn by talking live. So it's much more fun if people use the chat for questions. Also, I try to get through this talking part as soon as, as quickly as possible so that we can do any sort of examples. But also, this doc in itself is a good guide that you can take home and use and practice. And also, this may be obvious, in case this is not like anything around using Leopard. This is basically the opposite of using Leopard to do your job search, right? Like, of course, we want to send you great roles that we've vetted and you send them through your Slack and work together with you all on that. But I know the job market is tough right now and people are doing outreach anyways. And so I figured I would just show everybody what our team does because we're pretty good at LinkedIn connection requests and specifically just like outreach lead generation, right? Like that's how we got here. Wait, quick show of hands right in the chat if you joined Leopard from a LinkedIn note from the team. It's not everybody, but I'm sure some people are. Just I think we all know, right? Like applying to jobs online sucks. There's so many reasons. I'm sure everybody's experiencing this. Feel free to chime in the chat so that I don't feel like I'm talking to a wall. But I think there's no surprises here, right? Like the companies are flooded with applicants. We can all see it on their LinkedIn pages, right? Like you can get like 1,000 applicants in a day or whatever that is. Tons of competition, no surprises there. I think this third one is the worst one, right? Like it's pretty standardized the way that it shows up for a company, like the view. And so stand out or to get somebody's attention is like really hard besides just like crossing your fingers that you write a good note if they even look at notes, right? It's hard to know what they're looking for or how to stand out. So there's just, you're just sort of crossing your fingers every time. And honestly, people get passed over for really weird, silly things. I mean, I don't know if this has happened with any of you, but sometimes I'm on the phone like with somebody joining our network, and I'm like, I actually couldn't even tell how much experience you have. I looked like you had 2, but you have 8, just on the way your LinkedIn is shown, or like I missed the second page of your resume, or whatever it is. There's like little information gaps. Sometimes it just gets you picked over, or a big we see like all the time, all day long, is like, oh, I haven't heard of the company she works at, pass. I haven't heard of her college, pass, right? And so it's just this like, it's like a black hole, right? I think nobody's surprised by this, but yeah. So we do outreach differently. I mean, I guess we're not you, right? Like, there's nothing for us to apply to, but I think that we reach out to tech companies about hiring software engineers, and that's how our business works. And so in many ways it's quite similar, right? It's not, obviously it's not like, hi, hire me Lexi for your software engineering job, but I am saying like, hi company, you should chat with Leopard to get more women in software engineering into your pipeline. So respond to my message and then we'll vet you and all that stuff, right? And so we send this note like I think 170 times a week per week as me. It says that there's 100 connections a week, but we've kind of figured out ways to get it up to 170. And then we have 5 other people on our sales team sending messages that are sort of like this, or they're changing it, or they're editing and all sorts of things like that. And that gets us like 5 to 7 company meetings a week for doing our job, right? That's 170 times 5 to get to 5 to 7 meetings, right? You can do the math on that. It's obviously, you would hope for more conversions, but I think it's pretty good because we've sort of optimized it. But we do the same type of thing at even higher volume on the network side. That's how women join our network. And obviously we're all here because of it. So clearly it works. I think like I have some theories on why it works that I think are going to work well for this network. I don't know for sure. Some people can't get this channel to work at all. Some people are amazing at getting email to work, or like Twitter to work, or, everybody's like approach, whether it's for selling or for getting a job, is different. But this channel, here are my reasons why I like think it is just amazing. So adding your face to outreach, like if you think about this job application, oh yeah, wait, I'm going to finish the sentence, then I'm going to respond to you, Alexandra. So I think the reason, like, I think this face thing goes a long way. It goes a long way definitely in sales emails. Like, when you get an email and you don't know who it's from, like, it's so easy to ignore. But when you like see somebody and they seem like nice and they're like making an effort, I really do think it just like makes a difference. You see who they are. Maybe that brings up all sorts of other like weird stuff, or when they see their picture and they respond. But I think it usually plays to our advantage. We also like AI our photos. Hazel has a whole guide on this. We should not. We'll do a different presentation on this, but we like AI our photos and make them pop more, and then we like get higher conversion. So photo clear makes a difference. Clever note can stand out. I think of that like, you can show your personality and get better conversions, or you can like be thoughtful or clever or interesting, or just do something to stand out, and then you can maybe get above the pack, or reach somebody in a different way. And that's really what we're looking for here. And when we're trying to add more top of funnel, is to not just apply into a black hole, but to do outreach that stands out and gets attention. I think this like allowing the other person to opt in is kind of nice, right? Like applications, you get so many applicants, you get so much junk as a hiring manager that like they can see your note and ignore it, or they can see your note and go, hey, oh, that's nice that this person reached out. I'm going to accept it, which gives you like a little bit of a sign that they might want to see your resume or talk more, which we'll show you how to kind of act on that. And then I think the mutual connection thing sort of does something, right? A lot of people try to hire from their network. So if they can see, oh, we have 9 mutuals, or, oh, it looks like she works with somebody that I used to work with, it can kind of like help make you stand out. If you have questions, put them in the chat about this, and I'm going to just show a ton of examples. But Alexandra's question: what is success of getting a response for reaching out to a company, someone versus an individual that's actually job hopping? I'm asking because I've done a lot of LinkedIn outreach, both in mails and or connected note. I've noticed this year response rate from people at companies has been much lower. I'm guessing they're being hit up by more employed people as than usual. I think honestly, Alexandra, I have some best practices in here. There's I don't have perfect conversions. Honestly, I've never done this kind of talk for people. I've never like, this came up last week. I was like, oh, Veronica, I'll show you how we do it. So I don't really have good stats on the conversions, but what I do know is we used to run client campaigns where we would help them do sourcing, and the expectation was 100. This was like in a really hot job market where nobody could get anybody to interview who was senior for their roles. That was like 100 notes per week, and that got you like 1 to 3 calls per week. Sometimes it didn't any call. So the main thing, Alexandra, is that most people under message. Yeah, so the numbers are bad, but so is applying, right? And so at least this channel is a way to mix it up and try something different, and as we mentioned, like, stand out. But the numbers are horrific. But that's sales and that's lead gen. And so the other cool thing about LinkedIn is we just sometimes that we have a lot of really good tricks for finding 100 people to reach out to per week. Anybody else have questions? I'm going to show a bunch of examples. I'm going to show kind of how it works, but just drop them in the channel. I'm just going to keep going. I'm just going to go. Okay, so I probably should have gone to this first, but I think we all get a lot of junk here too, right? So when I say stand out, it's actually not that hard to stand out. If you go through your own invitations, any of you, you will see that most of it is like boring junk, like blah, blah, blah. Like, it's honestly, your competition is really bad. Maybe, Alexandra, you're right that they're getting hit up by more people than usual, but my theory is that this channel is under. I rarely get people trying to work for us for Leopard this way. I mostly get like vendors. So you can see these are people like trying to sell me stuff, and it's not very personalized. So, honestly, I don't think that this specific use case is utilized very much, which is sending a super high volume amount of really clever, funny messages to enough hiring managers. Like, I know it's hard to 100 a week. I'll show you all how, but if that math sticks, right, that's like the really conservative math. Let's say it's like 1 call for 100 notes, or maybe 7, like those, let's say, or 10, or I don't know. But the whole point is just to keep the math, keep it in your head that it's not really going to work unless you send 100. And even if it does work, if you send like 40, to keep it going, you have to figure out a high volume strategy. And that's how we do it as well. Okay. But yeah, there's a lot of junk. I'm sure you can find it all day. And so it's kind of like a cover letter. A cover letter okay used really anymore. I have a bunch of examples of this, but the key things with like writing a LinkedIn connection note are, you have 300 characters, so you have to kind of jam everything in there. And I have a bunch of examples of that, but you want to introduce yourself really concisely. I have kind of tricks. You can go to your Leopard bio and like look at ways that we've helped position you. Think I'm a front end engineer with 7 years experience. Are a way to really quickly get a sense of like who you are and why you're relevant to them. Being personal and quirky, I'll show you guys a bunch of examples, but those are the things that stand out. If we go back to the example, it's very obvious that it's like kind of copy pasted, right? It's like not really personalized. This is nothing about me. So when it does feel like it's not a copy paste, oh, I got that one. That's great. And then like the kind of action item, and I have a bunch of different examples because it's not always about a job directly that works. So these are all just kind of some tips. Again, these are good to come back to and look at when creating your own, but I think examples are going to make it more clear. Okay, question. Do you see more candidates getting interviews and offers if they have a higher social media presence or maybe active portfolio or GitHub? It's a good question. So a lot of people have very blank LinkedIns, and that's something we see that really kind of like hurts them. It's like not enough context to tell how senior they are is the way I would say it. But in terms of posting, I don't think so. I really rarely hear about GitHubs like needing to see someone's GitHub anymore. So I would say for active GitHub, no. Projects, no. I think that's like, when you're junior, projects are really important. When you're more senior, I think projects in the context of the company you've worked on are important, but not like projects in their own right. I think it's like what kinds of things are you working at in your job versus like what are you doing open source the weekend. Hopefully that answers your question, Karen. But yeah, I think the most important thing is just a detailed LinkedIn when you do all of this and a good headline. And Hazel can share. We have a guide for this that we're kind of on that has tips for your LinkedIn. Okay. I think we know the bad ones, right? But as always, like anything that's like cookie cutter, boring, it's hard to be like quirky. It's actually kind of embarrassing. Like we have our team that writes these messages. We like meet and come up with silly things to write in our message. And I'm like totally cringe embarrassed when we do it and then it works, right? So being cookie cutter and boring is like actually basically not going to work. You have to make it stand out. You have to be specific. You obviously want to really like make it personalized to them, and that's hard. And then just like not enough context about you, so like you could flatter them all day, but if they don't understand that you're a senior front end engineer and you might be a relevant fit for their team, they might ignore it, right? So and again, honestly, if anybody writes a LinkedIn note after this and wants to post it in a thread in the network channel or wants to DM me and ask if it looks good, that could be really fun. I think that we read each other all the time at Leopard, and so also jamming it into 300 characters can be really hard. We can send out, Hazel, can you send the character counter out to the network channel? It's very critical for this. Okay, so we've got our examples. I'm just going to jump into, we've got our do's and don'ts. I'm going to jump into some kind of different ideas and I'm going to get into best practices. Does anyone have any questions before that? What are people's thoughts? Can they write like, does this seem like a useful tactic? Are people intimidated by numbers? Let me know in the chat so I can make sure we kind of cover people's concerns and questions. Does it feel promising? Yeah. Yep. Definitely share that character counter. Hazel, my examples are going to get into this. So anything else kind of come to mind? Definitely numbers game. Yep. Considering the character count. Yep. Agree. It's so hard. Wondering how much time to spend on this versus other outreach activities. It's a really good question. I think, let me show the examples and then we can kind of decide. So, okay, I came up with a bunch of versions. Still, you want to personalize it. I'm like notorious for using LMK exclamation point. And like everybody in the world gets LMK exclamation point from me. And to clear some that I was here, so you don't have to use it. But it does take up very little space. So if you go back, you'll start to see all sorts of things we were doing to take up very little space. But yeah, so I came up with different versions, right? The most for if they have a job opening, right? And I'm going to go get into the leads, how to find leads, who to reach out to, etc. But if there's a job, yeah, like I start hiring, I'd love to tell more, see if there's a good fit. This is sort of, I don't even really love this, but I think I'm kind of hitting some of the core bases here of like, I'd love to be a part of your team. Just that, like, here's who I am, why I'm relevant to you. I saw you're hiring. Again, I think that this probably could be tighter, but it's actually like the most straightforward one. The hard part about that is researching. So I'll go show you like how our team would research for this one. But yeah, I think that's like the straightforward one. However, as we know, straightforward like might not work, right? Straightforward might be the worst converting thing you can do. So the question was, if there's a job posting but no hiring on team on LinkedIn, how do I show who to message, reach out to? Yep, Emily, I'll show you in a second. It's in the second section. Okay, I think like the quirkier, the weirder these get, the better they convert. So this one, I think like, I think we all know this. If you don't know this, it's probably because I know this from like 10 years of working with startups, but startups love, yes, Karen, exactly. I'm a huge podcaster consumer. This is exactly the one I'm talking about. Like that's what this template is. So I'm a huge podcast consumer and have amazing ideas about how to improve some of the bugs I've seen. Yep, I love it, right? Like that's where I kind of think you can have something to say about their idea, like a question, curious, something that shows you actually know what they do. That is like so hard to come by. So many people interview, they didn't look up the company ever in their life. Maybe that works fine at a bigger company, but like if you're a small company, if someone was like, hey, Leopard, I was wondering if you guys are rolling out a mobile app. I know you're mostly Slack based. I'd be like, I'm so seen, like, so honestly, the bar is very low in terms of like having looked at the website and knowing what it is. So the more personalized, better. Launching web app, is it dangerous? And asking a yes, no question. If the answer is no, what's the call to action? Actually, I think getting them to say something is great. So like we do stuff all the time in our like messaging or our follow-ups, which I probably should have included some more follow-up templates. So I'll go make some of those after. But like, we'll be like, oh, hey, have you guys thought about your headcount yet for 2024? And they're like, no, not yet, but thanks for reaching. So I think a no is great. I think any response is great unless it's like, I hate you, go away. But if they accept the connection request, they're probably not doing that. So, and I don't think that I hate you, go away is really going to up you. When I get junk, I just ignore it. That's usually the worst case scenario. So, okay, where was I? So this one, does this all make sense? Like the more specific, the more creative, the more relevant, obviously is the best. But I have some other tricks for personalizing. This one's a great one. It also works if you went to a boot camp or you used to work at a big company and you look for other alumni, right? But people love alumni. They're always willing to help alumni, right? So if you can like go through your college and look for people who are hiring managers now and have some kind of tricks that you might get some bites, like especially, NYU is where I went and it's a pretty big school. It's like 50,000 people a year. And so the likelihood that I can get some meeting out of that is probably non-trivial. Okay. This one's a little more general. It's like sometimes it's hard. Our sales team will sometimes try to like personalize about why a tech company is interesting for Leopard to work with. And when they stumble, it's like kind of goofy, right? They're like trying to make an argument about why why construction tech is super interesting, like fascinating for us, or like, sometimes like certain like analytics for some industry you don't understand or whatever it is. Basically, sometimes you can't come up with personalization and you still want to try to like say something. And so startup, right? This is like one of the main requests. All the companies that we work with are like, I really want someone who is interested in joining an earlier stage company, is comfortable with the ambiguity, things like that. brings, right? And I think you can say this for like any company that's under 250, 300 employees. I guess if it's really, you're using the words early stage, it's like, it'd be fine. It should be under 100 or 50. You can kind of decide, but people love that. There's not enough filtering online when you do LinkedIn requests, like, or, LinkedIn messaging in general, you're recruiting on LinkedIn, like, do people want to work for a little company or not? The thing we built like our whole company at AngelList on was like candidates that wanted to work for early stage companies. So yeah, when in doubt, if you can't personalize it, scale it back a little bit and talk about the company size or if it's small. Okay. Oh, my little emojis aren't working. This is so sad. I thought it was working back here. Okay. So this one is like, it might not work. I'm not sure. It's basically like, there's no job. I'd love to learn more. Like, I'd love to introduce myself and be in touch in case of anything. And again, obviously, this one's like less of a slam dunk because you kind of don't know what you're shooting for. But if you're trying to hit 100 and you're trying to find people who may be hiring that don't list, which I talk to tons of companies that are hiring and don't have a job listing up because it's blown up and they are not handling job applications. So they just want to talk to people through their network or people through Leopard. So if you're like, I've got to send 100 notes this week and I can't find any who have open jobs, you can try more of a general hello. And it's like, I'd love to know if you guys are ever hiring, kind of thing. Here's my skill set and here's what I bring to the table. And then there's some follow-ups you can do with that. But again, probably the worst converting one, but good to know just in case you're trying to increase your volume. Can we get away with not saying, hey, name? Yeah, I hate saying, hey, name. My team always does it. I don't remember. I haven't really seen that it like improves conversions. I think that people think of it as a personalization thing. I have some like tools for automation that we used in the past to do, like you can automate it. We have a spreadsheet of like 100 LinkedIns to go through. We have all these tricks for that, but I didn't put them in here because I think you have to do your own research before you're able to kind of increase the volume and do automation. TLDR, I don't think you need to use the name thing, but it's good to experiment with. It's not that many characters in the scheme of things. It's kind of up to you. Okay, wait, any more questions about any of these templates? Again, we have them. Oh, do you use the same paragraph for all 100? Good question. So I think it's more about like personally when we're doing this, I keep a bunch of templates in a Google Doc and I kind of switch back and forth. The problem is that you have to hit somebody with the right template, right? You can't hit the NYU template to somebody who doesn't go to NYU. So I think Katrina more about like having a right template person. If you use one of these more general ones, yeah, you can probably use the same paragraph for 100. But you'd rather use the most personal one you can. And if it means, if you're doing this job one, that is the one that like, if it works the best because it's an open job that you're a good fit for. And so I would say whenever you can add personalization, if it's better. If you start running out of personalization, these are where, like, actually, I still think of this as personalization. These two, early stage startup, I'd love to introduce myself. Those you can start to like send more en masse when you have nothing else to personalize on. But if there's a chance to personalize, do it. How many templates, what kind of templates should we prepare? Lisa, definitely just rip these off, right? We all have to edit them a little bit. So we can't start all sending the exact same message or it's going to be clear that like Leopard did this workshop and now everybody knows how to do it. But I think like having 5 is really good. And rip the exact format, right? It's like open job, love your idea, alumni, early stage company, would love to introduce myself. Okay, back to questions. How many different templates do you recommend? Yeah, 5. I mean, if you can come up with anything else, do it. I can come up with anything else preparing for this workshop, but I've definitely done, like, over time, we come up with things that work better. Like, if you notice that the Leopard team is hiding that you like worked on a consumer app a lot, we can maybe help you weave that in some way. So definitely tag me with your messages, whether it's in the network channel or whether it's in your own Slack, because I can help you tweak it. But it's just the most personal, the most unique, the most standout is better. Like literally our team does like stuff that is so cringy to me. They like make jokes, they like add emojis, and it works like amazingly well. So, okay. Would you recommend submitting your application through their portal and then reaching out as an additional step, or should we be submitting our resume directly to the person we're messaging instead? Great question. So, I'm going to go through the best practices and then come back to this question, Veronica, because I think that's like a really big one. Okay, when you're getting started, this is kind of those best practices that I was getting into, 100 to 170 per week. Do I think you're going to all get to that every single week? No, it takes people full time. Like it is literally 5 people's full time job at Leopard to find companies, and they each aim for around 100. And so if you don't have time, get it. But if you are job searching, the closer you can get to this, the better. Follow-up number 1. I think that I probably should have included that, Veronica. I think you're right. I'll go back and edit this. Which is our team sends a note within 24 hours when somebody has connected. So basically, okay, so you send the note. If they accept connection, they go into your inbox, right? You've all seen this if Leopard ended up in your inbox and sent you a note. But I think that some people are like worried, they don't want to overload and spam. We follow up with like my calendar, my email, the information they need to know, the resume, etc., within 24 hours. And we also send an email with all of that information. So, would you recommend submitting the application through their portal? I would say it probably doesn't hurt. They might tell you to apply too. The only reason not to do that, Veronica, I mean, like, I think it's probably no harm. There's like one world where company's like, oh, I would love to share your application with our hiring manager. Can you apply through this link? I think as many of these as you can stomach doing all at once is great. But I do think the double hit when they've connected is great because you're sort of on their mind. Whereas the problem with the application is it just goes into a black hole. So I don't think you have to time the application with the follow up, but I would time the LinkedIn follow up with the email follow up. Okay, let me know if you have more questions if I didn't really answer that question, Veronica. So, and then yeah, follow-ups, the next follow-ups, like we do all follow-ups on LinkedIn. My goal for our team is to send follow-ups to everyone I've been connected to once a quarter. Again, hopefully nobody needs that, but it just means you're allowed to follow up on there. You obviously don't want to like irrelevantly spam, but I do think you could send another follow-up, just making sure you saw this 2 to 3 business days later. You can send on like a Sunday, but it's generally good. We find like Monday through Wednesday are good days to do it. Friday starts to kind of fall off. But and then yeah, I think if you are like you think you got a hook, most people don't follow up as many times as they should. If somebody was like, oh, I'd really love to chat, just filled our role, and you want to try to go like engage that lead or ask them for a referral, I think one time per month of like a follow-up once they've engaged with you is the right amount. But it does feel crazy when you're doing it. This might feel overwhelming. Just remember, these are like the things that you can do to optimize your flow. And this has taken like me and our sales team a lot of time to iterate on, like we iterate on in our one-on-one. So like this is a process that's tried and tested for what we do. Again, the question is like how much time should you spend? And I think the thing that gets kind of cool is like it's really how effectively you feel that you're able to find leads. And like it's pretty fun if you're finding a lot that you like. So these are all good tips for finding good leads. And I would say like, you know, if you're having fun with it, keep going. If you're finding that this is a horrendous drag and you hate it, you don't have to do it. But I find it kind of I'll show you why. Like I think that I have found some good little tricks. So these are a bunch of different ways. I'm just going to go right into the examples of finding good leads. Right, if you're going to find 100, you've got to get kind of creative. And so, the first thing is just looking for those open jobs. Right, we're going to take this Vet Cove one. I just put software engineer startup into LinkedIn. Lots of different job sites. And then I put Vet Cove Engineering in. You could put in everyone and just message like anybody who has shared mutuals, or you could message this head of engineering or the CEO. I did some other examples with that, but I thought it was kind of interesting that Gabriella came up, and like maybe she's the right person to message, right? Is it just the co-founder or is it Gabriella? We don't know which one is likely to convert. So I think it's kind of good to experiment. And sometimes, Mitch gets like as many random spam messages as I do, whereas like Gabriella gets mostly jobs. So then she hears from a woman in software engineering and she's like, oh, I'd love to connect. So it's not always obvious who your in is. And I would experiment with it if you can, because sometimes, like especially that alumni one, it might be her who gets you through the door. It might, not be one of those like, hi, I have an open job and I'm trying to hit you because you're the manager. And that's why I say, if you are hitting like a software engineer, it gets easier to get to like 100, right? It might not be as good of a campaign, but it's easier to find more people. You also don't want to hit like 1 million people at the same company. I know that's maybe obvious, but we have guidelines. So I'll add those to this and share it as well. Okay. Questions? How do I keep track? Oh, good question. It's actually, my team now puts everything in a spreadsheet. I'm like lazy, like super lazy. And so I just like look for leads and send them the connection. I'll show you guys, but technically you can go see who you sent connections to. Hazel, do you want to send that link to? Do you know what I'm talking about? The invitation one? If you can go, or I'll go send it after. Let me just make a note. There's a section called invitation sent, but I think you can see it on the previous slide that it shows you if you messaged this person before. So that's like the lazy person way to keep track. Katrina is like, okay, I already messaged this person. I can't message them again. I think it's more about getting top of funnel going than it is about tracking everything, because it's easy to go down a hole where you have to keep your spreadsheet updated. Whereas our goal right now is volume. And as long as you just don't message like 100 people from the same company, it's best to just like keep moving. Also, in terms of the how do you keep track and get to 100, it tells you can't send anymore. So we hit that last week. Like you can't send another connection request this week, and then you have to send anybody else's next week. So yeah, I think it's not about perfection. It's about finding leads, and that's going to be the game. Other questions, people in the chat? But this one, I put React, right? I put New York just so we can see. If you take those off, it's a pretty big group, right? Again, we're probably all going to be hitting this list. So it's better if you get more personalized, and it's better if you write a different template. But I think that like adding a little bit of words actually get, like let's say it is just head of engineering. It doesn't have New York, it doesn't have React. That might be the list that gets the most hits from every salesperson and everything. So I think it's good to like add different little things and look for ways of filtering. But yeah, head of engineering, you can try the software one, just software engineers or leads or front end, or like I'm often telling like mobile or iOS people to just like message other mobile members of, other, like every director of engineering for iOS, and see what happens. Akancha said Trello is good for keeping track of things. Personally use Excel, and yeah, it's just difficult to maintain. Again, I'm very lazy in my tips. If you want to track it, you can. We have some tools. It's just like setting up tools, is a whole thing. Whereas I'd rather people get the flow of like finding people to message and messaging them, rather than like worrying about tracking it and keeping it perfect, because as we know, it takes a lot of volume to kind of like get some leads. Emily, is upgrading to premium a way to get around the character count or connection request cap? No, but you should I forget. We have a bunch of examples of why you should upgrade to premium. You don't have to do sales connector or sales recruiter or recruiter like, but usually upgrading just like to whatever that next level of premium is. I think it like makes sure your picture is shown. I think you can like go through broader connections and see more profiles, which is probably still good, but it doesn't get around the connection request cap or character count. Honestly, I think there's like a bit of an art to this format. And so I know 300 characters is like stressing some of you out, but I think it's good. Like you can always write too much in a message or cover letter or things like that. It's kind of good practice to like get really concise about how to stand out. Okay. This is that alumni one, right? I just added like college. It didn't come up with as many people as I expected. Note that sometimes it gets it that it's the school NYU. We don't want heads of engineering at the school who work at the school. We want people who went to the school. So again, this is like, I actually expected, or if you put in just engineering, it's going to be a lot. And then these two were kind of some bonuses. So Crunchbase, this, I don't know if people have been like using Crunchbase much in their job search. I kind of hacked it so you could like do it on Google instead of, because I know they cap you pretty quickly if you don't have a subscription. I just put the word Crunchbase healthcare startups NYC, and it gives you like the top 10,000 in their ranking. And I think you should be able to see a lot. I forget many, but then I took these and like looked them up and then just put it into LinkedIn and looked for the team, and you can message all those three, right? So same thing, articles, put in your industry of choice and just go wild, right? So these are all good ways to find leads. It's hacky. You might not be like, oh man, I want to, 100% want to work for anywhere, but seems like, why not chat with Victoria, right? Especially if it's like, it's like a cool CTO. Seems at least like worth the ping, and then you can always, again, it's like, do I do my research first, or do I just send notes? But that's why I kind of stuck with industry or something that makes it at least worth it to you if you do get the meeting. Yeah, those are my tricks. That's all I've got for now. I can go back to other slides. I'd much rather just like maybe go like stop filming and talk more than all of the chat and get everybody's impression. They're overwhelmed and all sorts of things. So I'm going to do that. And Hazel can stop filming. Okay. Thoughts, questions? Do we want to workshop anything live? Does everyone want to write, or slash does anyone, not everyone, does anyone want to write templates and share them with each other? What's a good follow-up here? Oh, bye, Katrina. Oh, it's one message that you cringed at received an answer to. Oh, let me go find it. There are so many, like, oh my God, it's so embarrassing. I'm going to show you. People drop more questions. Our team does a lot of emojis these days. I'm not finding the embarrassing ones. I think it's like they just try like, oh, what's a good example, good answer to that question, Lisa? Like I do this thing on LinkedIn where I in my follow-ups, I like make a joke about the last time I followed up, and I like do a crying emoji, right? Like sometimes I'm like trying to come up with something to say in a follow-up, and I'm like, man, the only thing we have in common is that I like messaged them 2 months ago and also over the holidays last year. And I'm like, make a joke about the fact that I've like been following up with no reply or something like that. And I like make an embarrassed emoji, and like sometimes people respond, or I'm like, last time we connected looked like it was 10 years ago, lol. And like I sort of just like poke fun at myself, and I think that emoji like stands out as being different. I don't think it would work as well in a connection note, but I think it works well in a reply. Anyone else? Questions? Thoughts? Was this helpful? Is this overwhelming? Write one word that would describe how you feel after learning this technique in the chat. Nice. Okay, cool. I definitely want to like help people on their templates. We've done this a lot. And again, if this does not work for you, it is because it is so aggro, right? It is like hardcore generation, like level 1,000 difficulty. But as we know, it means you're going in a different way than the job application. Is hopefully a chance to stand out. As Veronica was saying, you can try that and email and apply and this, but these are like, if you're gonna go all out, we know these work, right? And they work enough to get a meeting, 5 to 7 meetings with the hiring manager per week to talk about hiring more engineers. So clearly it's like I'm hitting the right person this way. We're getting enough, it's working consistently enough at a large enough volume that it works, right? So definitely helpful. Need to use this for job postings, but also for random companies I admire 100%. That last one, I should probably have put the names on these. I'm probably going to post a little bit of an edit. This one, I think this one is so underutilized. Like, hi, I'm just really interested in what you all do. That one, even when you're not job searching, you're totally right. Like, just like being proactive about this stuff. Like, anytime you see an article about a startup you think is interesting and you're like, oh, wait, sorry. This is a little, actually, this was the high, but it's this one. I'm a big fan. I'm super intrigued. Blah, 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 blah. All that stuff. I think it's like, I would be so happy someone sent me that message. And I get so much junk per day. It's just like nice to hear that somebody's looking at your company and thinks it's good. So forward, I'm not ready to workshop template yet. I want to research target company and start off with personalized template and then send you feedback. Sounds good. Glad you're feeling inspired. Great for session. Need to drop off. Okay. That's all I have. So DM me if you have questions or thoughts. Hopefully this is just another technique. And if it works, like, please let me know so we can celebrate together. Okay. Thank you all.